Hello, everybody. Welcome to WordBridge Now. We are teachers, educators, and authors collaborating against hatred. And today we have the wonderful Dr. Nancy Mack joining us, and she'll be talking with us as our teacher author guest this year on Teacher Appreciation Month. Hello, and thank you to all the teachers out there. And we will be thinking about writing and the ways that that helps us also kind of break down some barriers and get back to combating that negativity that exists in our world. So I'd like to share my screen and we'll go through a few announcements before we get started here. So again, we are here to ignite a passion for diverse literature. We have live online author meetups with that belief that words build bridges to unite. It's a way for each of us as individuals to branch outside of this one narrow experience that we live to look into others' lives, those mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors like Dr. Bishop talks about. A big thank you to our partners at Lee and Low Books. They are the country's largest publisher of multicultural literature. Wonderful teacher resources on their website as well. And if you are comfortable, please say hello in the chat with your name, your affiliation, or your student, your friend, or professor. If you'd like to share your pronouns, feel free to do that. I use she, her pronouns. And if you would like, you can put your email in the chat. Privately to Jess is fine, and she will send you a certificate documenting contact hours for professional development. And for our students out there, I just heard from Tracy Kramer from Wright State. If you are in a field experience in the fall, yes, you can bank your summer hours, including WordBridge authors, toward professional development in the fall. So that's a very nice bonus. All right. And again, if comfortable sharing your camera, we'd love to see your faces. You can share your Q&A and also take a look at our Book Bridges podcasts. So we have little snippets and highlights of our authors. So eventually Dr. Mack will be up on our podcast, which is available on any platform as well as on our website under the podcast link. Nancy will be sharing some slides today. She has given us permission to share her slides. Thank you very much, Nancy, for that. So with that said, I guess it is fine. We don't necessarily have any copyright infringements with that. Thanks again, Nancy. I'd like to take a minute to just think about where we are here today. WordBridge is coming to you from Hilliard, Ohio. And we are on the land of the Shawnee, the Wyandot, the Kaskaskia, the Miamia people. And with this spirit of words as bridges, we seek to support justice for all people, including Indigenous people, in all of the ways that we can, including literature and raising our voices. Okay, so feel free to join us. I hope you will in the future. And today, I'd like to take a moment to just take a deep breath and breathe and settle in as we get ready to enjoy some positivity. But we'll take a moment of silence, thinking about the many things that are happening in our world and people who are suffering and in conflict. And today, May 4th, the remembrance of the Kent State shootings. So we'll take a moment to just breathe in a moment of silence. Thank you. Our upcoming authors, so save the dates. We have graphic novelist, writer, and illustrator Gareth Hines. He writes a lot of adaptations of classics, and I happen to know at least one person in the room will be in my communication arts class, if I'm remembering that. Is that right? Yes. So we will be reading graphic novels, and Gareth's The Odyssey will be one of the choices that you will have. His pieces are always very well done, heavily researched, and really do justice of an accessible way of bringing those classic texts to life. Romeo and Juliet, Edgar Allan Poe. So very excited to have Gareth Hines joining us in June. Then in August, I'm very excited to have Neil Schusterman, who is the author of so many wonderful books. The Unwind series, the Scythe series, and his latest, as you can see, have music allusions. I Am the Walrus and Shock the Monkey. So very, very fun with those. So very excited about Neil Schusterman coming up in August. And after that, we will have an intersectionality panel of authors discussing just that, the ways their identities, various identities intersync and come into their writing. We also will have in October, Alessandra Narvaez Varela. She has a free verse novel. Content warning, it directly kind of discusses the idea of suicide. 30 Talks Weird Love. November, we have Paula Yu, her latest book, Rising from the Ashes, Los Angeles, 1992, Edward J. Song Lee, Latasha Harlins, Rodney King, and A City on Fire, nonfiction. It will be released this coming Tuesday, May 7th. I have an advanced reader copy, and it's phenomenal. Paula Yu has been a long listed author for the National Book Award, so very excited to have her coming up in November. So our guest of the day, Nancy Mack, author of Engaging Writers with Multi-Genre Research Projects, talking to us today about writers as problem solvers, learning from what writing can teach us. Go ahead and get Nancy front and center here. Nancy Mack is a professor emeritus of English at Wright State University and the author of Engaging Writers with Multi-Genre Research Projects and 2 volumes about teaching grammar with poetry. She has published articles and chapters about teaching memoir, emotional labor, and working class and first-generation students. She has won state and university teaching awards. Her community service projects include partnerships with the National Endowment for the Arts, the Ohio Arts Council, Dayton Public Television, and the Ohio Department of Education. It has been my absolute honor to have Nancy as both a mentor and a friend for many years. And to this day, I still continue to learn from Nancy. So please join me in welcoming Nancy Mack.
Hi, this is exciting. I'm not a big Zoom person, so Angie has helped me get going here today. So I'm really happy to do this. My talk today is based on an article that will be published this fall in the Journal of Pedagogy. But if anybody would like an galley proof to read, I'd be happy to email that to you. So it's all ready to go. And the journal is Pedagogy, and that will be something that you would have to get through the library. But like I said, I'd be happy to help you. So I'm focusing on students becoming problem solvers, because we all have problems with our writing. But students probably believe that great writers never have any problems at all. And that misconception, as well as lots of others, can really prevent students from becoming really good writers because they think they're different than all the other writers in the world. One of the things that's going to be happening in this talk is an emphasis on students becoming researchers of their own writing process. And that's become a bigger focus in composition than it was in the past. And we know that it really increases engagement. So, do you have the slides up, Angie?
Yes, let me get that going for you. And I will switch over. Right. And then you can just let me know okay or next whenever you are
Okay,
ready.
next. We're ready for the next one. Okay. So what I'm adding to problem solving is the students will do a lot of reflection because we find that you can force students to do something like I have done for years with pre-writing, and they'll do it for me in the classroom, but they never do it again to solve their problem of getting engaged quickly with what they need to write. So, and we also know, and my main focus is on first generation students, that, they need a boost in their confidence. And this, having them actually engage in this in kind of a rigged way, I would say. So it's like Vygotsky's notion of the zone of proximal development being like an apprenticeship. So we're going to help students as much as we need to help them have a successful experience, because that's the goal. And if they get that successful experience and they reflect about it, then it's something that they can draw from every time they write again. All right, next slide. So I already said the thing about how students, think that really good writers never have any problems, but it's true. We always have problems and different ones. It's always amazing when I write, which is constantly, to run into a problem and have to work my way around it. And we also know now a key phrase in education has been deep learning, that this happens when students don't have an easy way. When they're working on something complex, they're really being engaged. And I think for too long, one of the myths that's hurt students with learning to write is they believe that things are either right or they're wrong. And getting words to form the sentence that you really want to come across to your reader isn't a matter of what's right or wrong. It's a matter of working with that until you really make it make statements that you want it to. Okay, next slide. All right, so the introduction that I used to this article has been from that very bottom line that experts love problems. And in my life, I have had a lot of engineers. My father never graduated from 8th grade, but he could fix anything. And my brother was a rocket scientist, believe it or not, first generation. And my son is an expert computer programmer. And one of the things I noticed about them is that they all just love problems. My father would be happy to fix anybody's anything up and down the whole street. He'd fix your TV, your car, your washing machine. And when he couldn't get a part for something, he'd make it. And he worked at Wright Pat, and he was one of the first people to create the tools to fix jet airplanes. Because they invented the jet airplane, but then they didn't have any tools for them to be fixed at the different air bases. And so he worked out those problems, and he loved that. My brother was the same way. After he retired, he testified in all kinds of cases involving explosions because rocket fuel was his specialization. So what we want is for students to get engaged in a meaningful activity where they get the joy that comes from solving a problem that they've had, so that they know, if I run into a problem when I'm writing, I can fix it. I can work my way around it. Okay, next slide. This is just, I think, I see in common, I read all the research that started the growth mindset movement, and I think that's a very good thing. But I think the problem with that is it's a lot of teacher talk. And we hope that the students will pick up that talking, but it's without the experience. They need an experience where they face a problem. And of course, often that's a feeling of failure, and they solve it. And they get this sense of, I can do this, and I can do other things in my life. And we know a lot more about this. When I started out, I did a lot of workshops back in the 70s about motivation, and spoke at a lot of school districts and teacher organizations. But now psychologists have done a lot of research about motivation, particularly for first generation students. And I think this really fits with the problems teachers are seeing after the pandemic, where we have more students who are not engaged, we have more attendance problems, we have more emotional problems, they have weaker social skills. And so a lot of the research that I'm basing this on comes from these three terms: self-regulation, the ability to control yourself, which especially those of us who've taught middle childhood students or teenagers know that's a big problem. It's hard for them to control their emotions and be able to pay attention today for a few minutes at least. And success attribution has to do with them not believing in the myths that society has created, like that because they're a first generation student, they aren't going to be as good as everybody else. Because they are a minority or they're a female, they're not going to be as good at math. So that they can believe that they can be successful because believing makes it so. And also self-efficacy. And that's the feeling that whatever's going to happen in the future, whatever it is, I'm going to be able to work with that and make myself successful. Okay, so we're going to go through these things a bit at a time. The grounding for all of this has been a big research explosion on what the heck is a meaningful writing experience. So 3 of the most powerful researchers in composition at several different universities did a huge study with graduating seniors from college and said, we want you to remember the most meaningful writing experience you had in your whole life. And we're going to ask you some questions about that. And we want you to talk about it. And they did this with surveys, but also one-on-one interviews with hundreds of students. And these are the things that they found out. And of course, this makes my heart so happy. That first of all, students have to be personally connected to their topic. So that means no more dummy writing assignments on school topics, but writing about things connected to their lives and things that they value. And that they are engaging with their topic, but also peers and instructors. So this isn't in isolation. And sometimes these students need to know that their peers think their topic is really good, not just the teacher. And it can't be easy. It has to be challenging. It has to relate to the things that they already know about. And it has to help them imagine themselves in a future. And the key term for this is expectancy value. So before they get involved, our big job as a teacher is how we introduce the writing assignment so that they are excited about it, and that we have to do all we can, show them examples, do pre-writing so that we know before we start that they're really going to be excited about writing whatever it is that we're asking them to write. Next slide is my favorite writing assignments. And I'm not going to spend much time on this because I've written about it and it really isn't the focus of this. But this changed all my teaching. The first time that I tried multi-genre writing assignments, I was just blown away at how wonderful they were. I got my idea from Tom Romano, and basically it was having students write from interviewing someone in their family or their community or in a group that they belong to, and finding an experience that this person had that then they can investigate, they can research, they can ask more questions about. And of course, I have a book about that. Then memoir writing, that often is the first assignment, the Where I'm From poem that I started years ago with George Ella Lyon. That is in a free chapter in a free book. That one's in the middle, critical expressivism. And it's often writing about conflicts that students have had in the past. Oddly, students can usually write better about something that was troublesome than they can about something that was super wonderful, because they tend to get into hackneyed ways of talking about their best sports experience. But when they write about a problem that they had in a sports experience, here we go with problems again, and they learn something, that makes a much better essay. And then the last book there has gone out of print, and I haven't done much with this late in my career, but I did a lot in my early career about ethnographic writing, where they actually study a social group. And I even did that with the inmate writers that I had in prison. And I did that with first year comp. And so that's online, and it's interesting to read. I did that with my best friend colleague, James Zabrowski. Okay, next slide. This one itemizes the 3 points I'm going to work on today. That students need to, first of all, identify a problem. Isn't it funny that lots of times kids don't realize they are having a problem until the last minute? And at this time of year, this is when kids come to teachers and say, oh, it's almost the very end. How do I raise my grade? Didn't you realize before now that you were having a problem? That kind of thing. And kids don't realizing they're procrastinating. You have to check up on them. Do you have your draft? Do you have your work? And they're, I forgot it. Blah, blah, blah. You have to get them talking about their problem to solve it. And of course, the reflection comes in with how they evaluate the experiences that we have in the classroom. And that's where I like to ask them to help me research. All right, we did these 5 things before you even started your assignment. We read an example, you brainstormed, you talked with peers. We did all these things. Now, which one of those helped you the most? Because what we want is for students to have this repertoire of things they can do when it's not going well. So they have to identify, I had a problem, here's what works for me, which maybe it doesn't, free writing doesn't work for every student. That's okay. They don't have to all lockstep do the same thing, but I ask them to try it. And when they try it, then they have to evaluate it. And then my big, late in my career insight is about giving up the role of fixing their problems by marking all over their drafts and correcting everything. That is not a successful strategy and ruins your personal life as a teacher. And I'm going to show you something else to do instead of that. Okay, first one, next slide. All right, self-regulation. So this is something that the growth mindset doesn't really get into. It has them, know what to say. I'm going to try. I'm going to get this. But this is something that you need to do at just in a few seconds at the beginning of class. It's so helpful. I remember a time when my eighth grade students were just awful one day. They would not do anything. And I finally decided, what the heck is going on? So I said, here's a scrap of paper. Everybody write down what's the problem today. And of course, I hadn't realized today was picture taking day and nobody wanted to mess up their hair by getting out of their seats and actually doing something. So what we need to do is to take a temperature. And when I introduce something like the multi-genre project, and students find out they have to write 5 genres and it's going to be really long and blah, 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 they are overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, this is going to be so hard and we're going to work on it the whole term. And I have no idea I've never done anything like this before. So if you get their reaction quickly to what's going on, and often this works great at the beginning of the class period, but it also works really well in the middle if you're having problems. And it works really well as an exit ticket. And you can do this by I like to do it anonymously. I know one article I read calls this a weather report. And you just quickly go around the room and have students tell you how they're feeling about whatever. How's your draft? Tell me how your draft is going. Slow, fast. I got 12 pages. I'm wonderful. You know, what's going on with them? And then lots of times during work time, if I've given them time to proofread or whatever, at the end, I ask for, all right, you spent time on this in class today. Thumbs up if you were productive and you got a lot done. Thumbs down if this was a loser, you didn't get much help, you're not happy with today. And that helps me know, if I need to change the directions, if I need to change the partners, what is it that I need to do? And so basically, this is helping students identify that there is a problem early. And then we can go on to the next slide, which is modeling, finding solutions. So, all right, you're feeling miserable about writing. Well, I do too. And one of the things that I learned, which helped me so much, is on the first day, I'm dreading and I'm starting something and I just don't feel like I can do it. I tell myself, starting is the hardest part. If you write 2 words, it's successful. So these are just little tips that students can try. And what you want to do is if you've identified a problem, when we get near to the end of the multi-genre project, they feel like there's only so many days left and how are they going to get it all done? I say, okay, let's make a calendar. Write how many hours you got this day, that day to work on this project. Let's put a task to it. What are you going to do with this day, that day, those 10 minutes in order to get this thing done? So you give them not one strategy, but you come up with 2. And sometimes I can think of these. Sometimes I turn to a successful student in the class and I say, how are you getting this done? What helped you? And by doing those things, we can have some strategies. All right, try one of these for next time. I've given you a graphic organizer. Don't like it? Make a list instead. Talk to your best friend about it. Do something different. And then we're going to report on it. And it's interesting what students tell one another as being successful. This is how I learned that some people actually get the greatest ideas for their writing taking showers. I'm not that person, but some people, especially if they shower early in the day, they are going through their day in their mind. Now, I get good ideas sometimes driving, which might sound dangerous to a lot of people, but I had to drive a lot to get to work. And that was a great time for me to think about things. Sometimes I'd come up with a whole new lesson plan driving to work. So a long drive, like Angie has, is something that I have always enjoyed. So it's about finding strategies, but helping students be the researchers. And the bad thing is, as teachers, we've kind of adopted of one strategy. There's one strategy that works. So Peter Elbow says free writing is the only thing that ever works. So everybody's got to do this. But as I have found, you run into some students that that does not work with at all. Okay, next slide. All right, success attribution. And this is where we want them to be successful. And if we give them choices, then they're saying this one worked and that one didn't. We want to focus on what worked. All right, so why did it work? And this is the part that I didn't do for years in teaching. And when I started doing it with the English education majors, it made a huge difference. I added number one late in my career. So I have them say, what are we talking about here? Is it free writing? Is it brainstorming? But how did you do it? And you find out that you thought everybody did it the same way, but they didn't, or they named it something different than what I said. And so what are we talking about? That's easy. Tell me what you're going to write about. It's only the first part that you liked. You didn't like that second part. And then, all right, why did it work? This is where it really just gave me more ideas about how to help students and what worked for them and why. Visualization, we have students close their eyes and imagine what they're going to write about and go into sensory details and all that. Good Lord, when I tried it, I wanted to laugh. I hated it. I couldn't do it well. But I found out, as pathetic as I was in doing it, there were many students who said that was the greatest thing that I'd ever done because of the sensory details. And then, of course, I learned from brain research that sensory details, when you ask people to remember them, the brain actually keys in as if it is really experiencing it. So that was pretty amazing. And it made me like it better. And by hearing students talk about what they liked, it helped me understand what part of it was really working. And then this is the success attribution. Okay, did you ever do that before? Did you have problems before with writing? Did you have problems with proofreading before? Oh, that stupid thing I asked you to do actually worked, to reading it out loud to yourself. Oh, but the problem is most of the time we run on to the next thing and they did it, but they don't remember that it was successful and why it was successful. And so then the last one is the newest thing in writing research, which is about the future. And this keyword now, if you want to look any of this up, and the article has too many citations, there's everything for you to find out on each of these things. It's called transfer. Right now, college writing scholars are studying what do students keep from their learning experience about writing and use later in other classes, other college courses, and in the job on the future. I had a chance to do a little bit of this research just before I retired, and it was amazing the way students remembered things. And so we want students to imagine the future and how they might use it. How could you use this in social studies? How could you use it in college? And we find that talking about the future really helps students see, oh, we're doing this for a reason. She's not just doing this to torture us. This is something we might be able to use in the future. And a lot of students in college are mercenary. If they are a computer engineering student like my son, He's not going to be interested in a lot of this English stuff. You got to help him understand that how you get a raise is in through what you write about what you did in the job. There's not somebody looking over your shoulder all the time. You have those yearly reports, yearly reviews, and you have to itemize what you did and explain it. So I'm loving the word analyze and asking students to do this. I often call this metacognitive reflection because the education majors are often asked about that on teacher tests, but it really is just having them reflect about the learning experience that they had. Okay, next slide. Everybody's writing process is different. The writing process came in as an idea with pre-writing, drafting, peer groups, revision, proofreading. None of that was taught to me as a student. And it came in as I was just becoming a college teacher. And, but unfortunately, and in the curriculum, they've kind of made this where everybody lockstep is supposed to do the same thing. That's where we got that free writing was the best, or brainstorming, or whatever. You turn your draft into the teacher. This is the best way to do it, blah, blah, blah. So what we want students to do is to think about their own writing process, which the fun part about this is they would probably say they don't have one. But when you get down to writing habits, this is where I just found out the most interesting things. Do you have a favorite pen? Do you have a favorite place that you like to sit and work on your computer? Would you rather work on your phone than your computer? Does it have to be a laptop? Do you like to eat chocolate while you write? Do you like to write late at night? Do you like to write at the kitchen table? All these things are so important. And of course, if you get your best ideas in the shower, we want to know that too. Boy, did students love this. I had a student who articulated that if he took a break and went out and played basketball for one game with his friends, that he could come back in and write like the blazes. I also had a very good friend who wrote his dissertation at the same time I did. And I noticed that his best pre-writing strategy was to pace back and forth. And so he called me one day in panic. He said, I'm locked, I'm blocked, I cannot write anything. And I said, John, have you paced yet today about your writing? He said, what? I said, you always walk back and forth until you get an idea. He said, no. I said, hang up the phone and do it and only call me. ah, Jess says, about your feet moving. How cool. You want to tell us about that?
I am the same way. When I'm working on something, when I was doing my thesis for my master's, and I got into a rut, if I get up and pace my house, as soon as my my feet work, the machine of my body works, which makes my brain work. So movement is great.
Yeah. And for me, mine is cleaning the toilet. Almost always I'll go to the bathroom while I'm trying to write and I'll look at the toilet and I'll go, oh, this is disgusting. I have to clean it, which of course is procrastinating because I'll end up cleaning everything instead of writing. But boy, I take a few swirls around that toilet, as awful as it may sound, and I got some ideas going now and I can go back to the writing. And you can ask them this at the beginning, you can ask them when they reflect about their strategies, and at the end. It's really great. I love to, when they are turning in a paper, not just have them turn it in. I love for them to tell me, okay, what problems happened and how did you solve it? Or I'll remember a problem that they had. And I'll go, tell them what your writing group did to help you. Oh, you're the one that liked those graphic organizers. Talk about that. And this is great because they're actually testifying. They're saying, I solved a problem. And that means I know you can do it again. You did it for me, you can do it again. Okay, next slide. Last big point, self-efficacy. You may have heard about this. I just was an outside reviewer on one of our former students whose dissertation was about self-efficacy. And this is all about their feeling that they're the fixer. And you're going to see in this one, I actually would like for students to use the word I fixed it. And this is kind of like the growth mindset. You're going to try to work on their errors in their writing, but get them to have the sensation that they fixed it. And for the middle childhood students, I've done this a lot, and boy, do they buy into this. It's wonderful. I've done it with ESL students, and it works really well with them too. They start smiling, and they have a different feeling about themselves when they fix the error instead of us doing it. Now, what this means for the big problems especially is that they need choices. So if a student comes up to me and the student says, I got 2 ideas for my introduction, I want you to tell me which one would be best. Should I do this or should I do that? Oh my gosh, telling them is the worst thing, because in my mind, it might be best to start with, a flashback, and it isn't the best for them. You give them a choice. Well, you could do this or you could do that. Try both ways and tell me which one works best. Oh, you chosen the one with the sensory details. Okay, well, why did that work for you? Oh, because they were all right, cool. You fixed it. And that's what you want to do, is to be able to say you fixed it. Now, when you go to peer groups with this, it breaks down, because especially now after the pandemic, kids don't have the social skills. You put them in groups, and the hottest gossip or the biggest problem of the day or punching that jerk becomes the priority. So you have to give them what I call talking points. So you give them like a smorgasbord of things you could do in today's writing group with your peers. I want to work on my introduction. I want to add more details. Pick one of these things, and when it's your turn, say that to your group, and they have to. They don't have a choice. They have to give you a better idea for an introduction. And they literally need these questions, or actually, I call them tasks, on a card. I tried putting them on the board. It doesn't, when you go into groups, it doesn't quite work as well. I tried desk tents and they fall on the floor. But they really need, when they're scared, it's my turn, I'm scared, and I hate you all today. They need to be able to read this off of a card to be successful. All right, next slide. All right, so this is for teachers. This is going to help you to have a better personal home life. One of the things that you learn is that it takes hours to correct students' papers. It just takes forever. I've timed myself. I don't think I can correct errors on students' papers for less than 15 minutes to a half an hour. And then I read this wonderful dissertation. I'd read other articles as well, where they actually interviewed and checked with students and gave surveys and videotaped them and watched them get their papers back. And what we found out from that research is that students are overwhelmed with the feedback. They only look at their grade at the end, or they look at the comments and get depressed, or they look at the questions in the margins. Gosh, my inmates hated that. The guy wrote why in the margin. Well, I told him why right there. Couldn't he see it? He's stupid. Awk frag? Well, this person doesn't even speak English when they write on my paper. So in all that stuff seems like a good idea. It's built into our culture. We feel guilty if we don't do it. I do it because I feel guilty. It took me a while to have to give this up. Students expect you to do it. Fix my paper. I've had students come up to me like 2 minutes before class starts. Could you fix this? Could you fix this for me? No, because they'll become dependent on you. And believe it or not, they'll contact you after the whole class is over, after they're in high school, when they're in college. They'll call you up, as one student did with me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and say, I'm going to read my thesis statement to you. Can you tell me if it's right or not? I mean, you want them to be the fixer. All right, here's how to do it. Next slide. Well, actually, there are 3 slides to show you. This is a part of our program at Wright State, a mini lesson. So you're not going to work on everything. You're only going to work on 1 or 2, and I'm talking about surface level errors now. Sentence structure, punctuation, subject-verb agreement, parallelism, all that kind of stuff. We're going to start not by me focusing on errors and making you feel bad about yourself, but we're going to start with my showing you good examples of what this looks like when it's corrected, when it's good. Then English teachers all have a little way to explain this. You want it to be short. You want it to be clear. Don't go to Wikipedia, because they'll have the most complicated linguistic reason for why prepositional phrases work. You want to just explain it as plain as you can. And then if you got any tips about how to do this, you give those tips as well. And then they've got to mark the good examples. You want to give them more than one good example. You want them to do something to show you that they're actually looking at it. Underline it in color, sort them into groups, whatever. I even did this one, which worked like dynamite. You've got 5 examples here of good sentences with subordinate clauses. Pick your favorite, get a partner, and defend why this one's the best one. Believe it or not, getting them to talk about it that way worked like dynamite. Then, during that particular class period, they have to look at what they've written and apply it to that. Then, next slide. This one is research that's old, but it's been redone many times by Richard Haswell. It's called minimal marking. Some teachers call this mystery marks and other things. Basically, this is where you spend a brief amount of time. Okay, I'm going to work on comma splices. And what you do is you pick up a page of the student's writing, and you find whatever it is you're going to teach today, and you put an X in the margin. You don't correct it, you just put an X in the margin. Then you bring those papers into class. You don't give them to students. You do your mini lesson, and then you pass out the papers and you say, here's where I was going to take off from your grade. You can fix it. And with my middle childhood majors, this was so much fun. I might pick 2 or 3 things: spelling and fragments, spelling, fragments, and run-ons. Okay. And so I'll say, if you have a problem, you can call me over. So they're working with pairs and they're doing this, and then they'll call me over for assurance. And I'll look down at their work and I'll see, oh, they thought it was this and it's not. And I'll say, no, that's not where the problem is, but it's close to there. And then they'll say, is it this? And I'll say, yes, now you corrected it. It was right there. And they get so excited because they just found it. And sometimes I might have to give them 2 or 3 clues. No, it's not a word. It's something that's missing that belongs there that we talked about, and then it's like, I got it. And then they can feel like they are the fixer. Okay, next slide. Now, this is something I probably learned almost the last year before I retired. And this is something my father always used to say about mistakes. He used to say, people don't make mistakes on purpose. Brains are not stupid. They're doing the best job they know how to do. But with my son in elementary school, I watched a Montessori teacher cure his math problems. And I thought, oh, this is so great. So Jeremy added this math problem wrong. And he was doing one of those practice sheets that had like 25 things on it. And the Montessori said, oh, Jeremy, I wasn't watching you when you did this. I see your answer there. I want to know, take me through, how did you get this answer? And he said, oh, okay. 2 plus 4 is 6. Oh, of course, watch me. I did this wrong. The other 6 should have been a 3. Okay, so it should have been 36. And she said, well, Jeremy, why did you do it that way? He said, well, when we read from left to right, and that's how I do math. And the teacher said, wow, that is how you read, but that's not how we do math. In math, we do 4 plus 2 and 2 plus 1. And he said, oh, okay, that's how you want me to do it? Yeah, that's how I want you to do it. So pretty much this is what you're going to do with sentence level errors. And this is the next slide where I learned this. We're coming down to the end. So what I would do is have students work in pairs after the mini lesson. Okay, work on comma splices, whatever. And so I'll say, if you have a problem between you and your partner and you're not sure, you can call me over. So I go over and they show me this sentence. Well, first of all, I can't do this instantly, so I have to read it out loud and think about it myself. But reading out loud is an excellent strategy to find errors. I'm modeling what they need to do. So if it's wrong, I do what Jeremy's teacher did. Oh, I see. You put the comma there. Why did you put the comma there? Oh, you feel a break there. Oh, you just guessed. Oh, whatever they say, I can say, oh, yeah, there is a break there between the subject and a verb, but we never, ever, ever put a comma there or whatever. And then we talk about it so that I'm giving them a reason why it's this other way. Then if it's correct, I do the same thing. Okay, why? Why did you do it that way? Give me your reason. And sometimes they can't. Well, but that doesn't mean that it's going to go in memory unless they've got a reason for it. So you can say, well, what do you think would be a good way to help you remember this? Because lots of times students will just say, I don't know, I just guessed. I didn't know. Okay, well, you got the right answer almost by accident. But let's decide, why is it there? Why would that comma come there? Could it be that all this part at the beginning of your sentence is not your main point? It's this point back here. So we put a comma in there to tell the reader, okay, hold on. I know I'm talking too much. I'm going to get to my point in a minute. So by having students talk about this is Vygotskian, what happens is the talk goes in their brain better than just hearing you talk. If they're talking about it, it's going into their brain. So this is a review strategy that I just cooked up and I actually have done, but my daughter called up and said, oh God, I have to do math review all next week. It's so boring. What can I do with these really bottom students? They're going to fail this test. What am I going to do? And I said, well, what you got to do is to get them to talk about the right answer. I said, so what I did is I took a kid I knew who couldn't do it. We did it together. I had them explain to me why it was done that way, how it was done that way, and I made them teach it to somebody else. And by golly, that kid became my comma splice expert in class because I took those few minutes. And really, as Janet knows, it's tutoring. You're tutoring them to find the right answer, to do the right answer, and then to feel, and their future is immediate. I can go to this kid in another group and explain that to them. Or next time we proofread, I still have people who are having comma splices. All right, Jason, you're our comma splice expert. Tell it to everybody, or just tell it to her because we got this thing happening again. Next slide. That's because these types of errors are habits. Why is it that every teacher that this kid has ever had has taught them about subject verb agreement, and they've made it to you and they still don't know how to do it? I once taught the same kids I had the previous year, and they were all making the same mistake we had worked on. And I couldn't blame it on the bad teacher that they had last year, because that was me. And what kids need is time to work on this and feel successful, maybe more than once. Maybe you have them proofread for comma splices this time, but once isn't enough. So next time it'll be comma splices, and I want you to look for fragments as well. So it means that they have to keep working on it for a while until they can be able to feel that it's part of them. And of course, that's where proofreading comes in, because some mistakes are not habits. They're just a problem with reading too fast or a conflict with dialect, that kind of thing. So to review, we need meaningful writing assignments. We need solutions for big problems that are emotionally upsetting and that the student may not be able to articulate. We need to reflect about the things that we are learning and that are successful. And we need to have reasons for why it is. Even if you have to make up a mnemonic device, like for the Great Lakes with taking the first letter, you just got to make up a reason. It can be a silly reason, like I misspell the word separate, but I finally learned that the A's in the middle of the word are separating the two E's on the end of it, so that I finally get my E's and A's right in that word. All right, last slide. And there's the title for the pedagogy article. Like I said, it's got all the research to back up all of this too, if you ever need it. And there's a free one that is similar. I go over some similar kinds of things in less detail in one that you can follow that link and read. And I used a lot of examples in that, I think, from teaching in prison. And then there's my most popular article about using color marking to get students to revise and mini lessons. And then there's my website for the multi-genre book, and the website of articles like the ones that are out of print that is from Wright State. B Press is something that the library has. Ta-da, I'm done. Want to talk about anything?
Wow, Nancy, thank you so much. I'm sitting there jotting notes too, and Jordan can tell you, like, oh yeah, Angie does that. We all have things we can always work on, for sure. So, like I said, I really meant that when I said I am still learning from Nancy. Just beautiful. Would anybody like to ask a question or make a comment before we sign off for today?
Nancy, I'm realizing how much your influence colored all of my teaching for 20 years, but I have something that was inspired by you that you're going to love, that I've used minimal marking for a long time, and I use it with middle school students in a certain way. Like you said, if you only are looking for one kind of error, like comma splices, let's say, and then you put a check mark. I don't use X's, I use a check mark.
Good.
And what the students know to do is they know they're looking for that one kind of error, that's all. They have to use a highlighter to communicate with me that they found it and fixed it. And then they make a smiley face out of the check mark.
Oh,
Great.
I love that. Oh.
I bought a bunch of emoticon stamps off of Amazon, And they come in a pack, and there's enough for a whole class, and they're cheap. And I had them put those emoticons on their paper as they, did it, so that I could check it where the emoticon was. That was hilarious. They loved that.
That is great. That is great. And I will say that, Nancy, I don't know if you ever felt this, but I say to the students, hopefully I say it enough, although I point things out. I point everything out to the future teachers. And I say, like, this is not how I taught my middle and high school kids by a long shot, but you just feel like, I always say it's like the marinara kind of thing. Like, if I have a little marinara on my face, I really want somebody to tell me so I can wipe it off. And like, if you're an English teacher going out there and you got a little glitch, like, I want somebody to tell me so I can kind of work on that. So that's a attention that I feel, because I don't like, and I
Yeah.
use dots, of grading online. I'll use little dots, blue dots. And then I realized that, not everybody realized, like, what are all these blue dots for, even though I've got a feedback key right there. And one thing I realized, that the student's view of their paper and the feedback key is different than mine. When I'm grading, I see the student's paper and I see the feedback key on the screen, but they can only see the paper. So now I've had to start, like, putting a sticky note and copy, I put a digital sticky note, and then I copy paste the key onto the top of the paper too. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you don't even know why these dots are there. That's a problem.
But,
So,
really, that's how I've learned everything, is through student feedback.
right.
And even if I did it right and it worked, I might not know why it worked. So, hearing their interpretation of why it worked makes me smarter. And it's amazing how, it takes so long to learn some of these things, as a teacher, but it's because there's all this belief out in culture that they should fire you if you don't mark every last error on a student's paper. I mean, my early teaching, somebody walked by a paper I was grading in the teacher's lounge and said, "Oh, you missed one. You missed it." Wait a minute. No, I know that doesn't work to mark every last thing. You have to relearn a new way to do it, because you've tried it. I mean, how many years have we all tried this, correcting everything for students, and they're still making these mistakes,
I think the bottom line too, Nancy, and I hope you'll write your next book about this, is how to be a responsive teacher. And that's what you've taught, and that's what you continue to teach and continue to shape. And I really appreciate that. And that's why I'm here. And I hope that there's a recording that I can share with some of my colleagues, because everyone needs to refresh in that we are responsive, and that's the primary goal of our teaching.
Yes.
And in that response, we're learning from them. To see it through their eyes is something we can't do. So the more we get them to help us understand, you're really upset today. I can tell by looking at you, why are you upset? How can I help you? That kind of thing has to come first sometimes.
That's right. That's right. Anybody else? Final comments?
I just want to say I just really enjoyed hearing you, Nancy, and hearing all the things that you had to say. It was very helpful. I'm not a teacher yet, still got a couple more years, but I'm going into my second field placement this fall. So I'm trying to take in, all the new tools and techniques that I can. So I found this really helpful, and I'm really looking forward to putting these things into practice in my field placements and in my future teaching.
I'm so glad you're here, because you're going to be teaching my favorite people. I just love those middle childhood kids, and it's because they don't mind getting excited about things. They're not cool. They can burst with joy. They can be so much fun. I like to have fun.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again, Nancy. Just what a joy. And yes, Janet and Jordan, I will be sending out the links. And Janet, I don't know if you would like a certificate or if Jordan, if you would, but okay, Jordan, you can submit that for summer. I just found that out yesterday for fall, that I wondered if you could bank ahead toward your PD hours, and Tracy Kramer said yes. So like, awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thank you again for being here. And again, just in the spirit of words as bridges, take care.
Thank you.